I tried all the major dating apps, and I never really had much luck on them. My friend told me he was having luck on this app called Hot or Not, so I gave it a try. Right off the bat, I was getting a lot more likes, albeit from girls I didn't really find attractive at all. Still, on my first batch of free swipes, I matched this one cute blonde girl named Julia. I'll spare the details of our conversation, but it went excitingly well. It was one of those rare matches where the girl was attractive and very receptive to my messages. It seemed like she was actually enjoying talking to me. We quickly moved to Snapchat. I asked her for her number, but she said, "Let's talk on Snapchat instead." I was fine with that. I added her on Snap and she added me back. Her Snap score was low, like under 1,000. So right away, I was suspicious and upset that this may have been too good to be true. I messaged her and I was blunt. I asked her to snap a selfie of herself just for my safety. I told her there's a lot of catfish profiles going around, so I can't be too careful. She opened the message right away, but didn't reply for a minute. I thought for sure the account was going to block me any second. But instead, to my surprise, I got a notification that I got a snap from Julia. I opened the snap, and it was the same blonde-haired girl from the pictures. Still, I wasn't convinced, so I asked her to give me a thumbs up or a peace sign. She opened the chat. I was waiting to see if she blocked me this time. She didn't respond for a couple minutes until finally she sent another snap. I opened it, and it was half her face smiling, holding up a peace sign. That was enough for me. I snapped her back, and then we messaged for a little while. We eventually made plans to hang out. She invited me over to her house, which was across town, not too far away. She said she was home alone and that it wouldn't be a problem. She gave me an exact address. I noticed she had her Snap map on, so I did a little check to make sure her address matched her Snap location, and it seemed to check out. I told her I'd be over in a few. I changed into decent clothes, sprayed on some cologne, combed my hair, and got in my car to head over. I remember thinking I may have overdid it with the cologne. She snapped me while I was driving, asking if I was on the way. I told her yes. She read it immediately, but didn't respond. I got to the house. It had the number 22 written clear as day next to the door. I messaged her that I'm here. She didn't open the snap, though, so I decided to just go ring the bell. There were no cars in the driveway, and the grass seemed like it hadn't been cut in a few weeks. I rang the bell, but she didn't answer. So I started knocking really loud. When she still didn't answer, I went back to Snap and tried calling her using that. It just kept ringing, though. She didn't answer. Was I just pranked? Suddenly, I heard a woman's voice yelling something at me across the street. For some reason, I imagined it to be Julia at first. I realized it was an older woman yelling, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" I began walking back to the street and called back that I'm meeting someone. She said back to me at a lower volume now that we were closer, "You have the wrong house. Nobody lives there." I asked for the address of the house, and the address she told me matched the address this Julia girl gave me. I thanked her and got in my car. I went to try to message Julia one more time, but she had blocked me. I felt like I was played for a fool. They unmatched me on Hot or Not too. Luckily, I took screenshots of the profile before that, because I sent some to one of my friends before driving to the house. When I got home, I sent screenshots to my friend group chat with like 8 other people, asking if anyone knew her. One guy, my friend Darren, said, "That's Lisa, a girl who overdosed on heroin 2 years back." When he said that, another friend in the group chat confirmed he was right. I got goosebumps because the snaps I got were from a girl who matched that Lisa girl completely. I told my friends, and they thought either I was crazy or the situation was crazy. Without a doubt, they were certain the girl in the snaps was Lisa. How this happened, I have no earthly idea. Better question, why was I led to that house? I can't even try to imagine. In high school, I was in a big graduating class, so for that reason, I didn't get to know a lot of my classmates on a personal level. Using dating apps in college, though, I was able to match and kind of connect with a lot of the girls I'd never really spoken to back in high school. I was using my app of choice when I matched this girl, Maria. She was in my grade in high school. I followed her on Instagram and Snap already, but I never really got to know her in high school. I sent her the first message and asked her how she'd been. I talked to her about high school a lot and how it was funny that we never really spoke or had any classes together. She said we should hang out that night. I asked if she'd want to meet somewhere for drinks or food, but she said she's down to just come hang at my place if that's cool. Honestly, I liked that idea even better. I told her sure. She asked if my parents were home. I told her no, only my sister. Then I gave her my address. She said she'd let me know when she's on her way. Then it was just a waiting game. I waited and waited for the notification saying Maria sent you a new message. In fact, it was going on past an hour. I sent a follow-up message on Tinder, but she didn't reply. A few minutes later, I checked her Instagram page and saw she posted a story a few minutes ago. It was a meme. Was she ignoring me now? I checked her Snap story, which was posted within half an hour, and she was apparently with her friend, another girl from our high school. I didn't understand. Was she coming or not? I commented on her story. Are you still coming later? She opened it a few minutes later and replied saying, what are you talking about? I repeated the question, then added a reference to the conversation on the app. She replied, I don't have that app. Send me the profile. So I did, and she told me right away it was a catfish, and to report it. I did so, and I think Tinder automatically unmatched the profile after that. But I wasn't concerned about someone using this girl's pictures. I was concerned someone had my address and knew my parents weren't home. I made sure every door was locked. I truly was expecting something to happen that night. But it was getting pretty late and I was starting to feel a little more relaxed. When my guard was down, that's when it happened. A horrific scream from my little sister's room. I jumped off the couch to go run to her room. She opened the door just as I made it to the room and we met at the doorway. She had this horrified look on her face like she just saw a demon. She screamed that there's someone outside her window. I couldn't believe it. She ran upstairs while I went to her window to confirm. There was no one out there now, but I knew it wasn't a coincidence. I tried to call my parents, but I couldn't get a hold of either of them. My sister slept in my room with me that night because she was scared. I only went to bed after waiting downstairs for an hour, listening for anything possible. When I was finally in bed, that was when I heard a noise. My sister heard it too because we both sat up at the exact same time. Our parents weren't supposed to be back that night. I went to lock the bedroom door and then got 911 on the phone. I whispered into the phone that I was certain we were currently the victims of a break-in. I told my sister to be quiet when she started making crying noises. Footsteps approached the door. Then someone tried twisting the doorknob, and they started banging on the door. In a deep, angry-sounding voice, a man said, "I know you're in there. I can smell you." The 911 operator heard it, and she told me to hide in the closet with my sister. I waved my sister over to the closet, and she came. We sat in there quietly the best we could, but he kept banging and banging on the door. My sister cracked. She cried out, "The police are coming! Leave us alone!" The banging stopped. We heard the man laugh. Then there was silence. Next thing we knew, the police were outside, and the operator told me to quickly get to the front door if the coast was clear to let the police in. The police then did a thorough investigation of the house. It was clear. The entry and exit point was my parents' bedroom window, which he climbed through off the backyard awning. My little sister screaming about the police must have scared him off. The police recommended we sleep somewhere else, so we went to my friend Joe's house. Ever since then, I always verify whoever I'm talking to from online is actually who they say they are. I'd been on Hinge for about 3 months when I matched with Kayla. Her profile had just 2 photos. One of her sitting on a dock wearing sunglasses, and another of her laughing at something off camera. She listed her job as property management, and her age is 28. I was 31 and had been on enough of these dates to keep my expectations low. We messaged back and forth for about a week. She was quick to reply and had a decent sense of humor, better than most conversations I had on the app. She had grown up in Columbus and moved to the city 4 years earlier for work. She liked hiking, which I didn't really do, and true crime podcasts, which I did. We didn't have a ton in common, but the conversation flowed easily, and that counted for something. She suggested we meet at a bar called Callahan's on Thursday night. I looked it up beforehand. It was a neighborhood spot about 6 blocks from downtown. She mentioned it was close to her apartment, which I took as a good sign. I got there a few minutes early and grabbed a seat at the bar. Callahan's was narrower than it looked online, and even with only about 20 people inside, it felt crowded. Kayla walked in at 7:15. She was shorter than I expected, maybe 5'4", with her dark hair pulled back. She looked better in person than in her photos, which doesn't always happen. She ordered a vodka soda without glancing at the menu and said she was glad I actually showed up. "Do people not show up?" I asked. "You'd be surprised," she replied with a small laugh. The first hour was standard first date talk. Jobs, the neighborhood, a restaurant nearby that had recently closed. I work in logistics for a freight company, so I kept my answers short. But she asked follow-up questions anyway, which I appreciated. She told me about managing residential properties on the east side of the city. It sounded stressful, but she said she was good at it. Around 9, the bar got louder. A bachelorette party took over the back, and the music was turned up. We had to lean in closer to hear each other, but we kept talking. She mentioned she'd been single for over a year after a bad breakup. I told her I'd been on and off the apps for a while without much luck. By 10 o'clock, we'd each had 3 drinks, and I was genuinely enjoying myself. Then she said her apartment was only a few blocks away and asked if I wanted to come up for another drink. I said yes. I paid the tab, and we walked out together. Her building was an older 5-story red brick place on the same side street where I'd parked, just a bit farther down. It looked rough from the outside. Broken overhead light by the entrance, nothing fancy. The key fob took her 2 tries to open the front door, and the elevator was out of service. We took the stairs to the 3rd floor. That's when I noticed the heavy smell of old cigarette smoke baked into the carpets and walls. There were water stains on the ceiling and a flickering hallway light. I didn't say anything, but I was already feeling uneasy. Her apartment was at the end of the hall. She pulled out her keys. When she unlocked the door, she stepped aside and said, "Go ahead," gesturing for me to enter first. That small moment stuck with me. I pushed the door open. The apartment was dark except for a single lamp in the far corner. What I could see looked chaotic. Clothes scattered on the floor, empty bottles, stacks of takeout containers, papers everywhere. It looked like the place had been ransacked or simply hadn't been cleaned in months. In the middle of the coffee table, a kitchen knife was stabbed straight into the wood, handle pointing up. I didn't step past the doorway. While I was staring at the knife, I heard a faint sound coming from what I assumed was the bedroom. I immediately took a step back into the hallway. "I think I left my wallet in the car," I said. It was a terrible excuse. I had just paid the tab. But I didn't care. She paused for a second, then asked, "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I'll be right back." I walked down the hall, took the stairs, and got out of the building as quickly as I could. Once I reached my car, I sat for about 30 seconds, watching the building. Then the front door opened, and a big guy in a gray hoodie came out. He started walking fast, almost jogging, straight toward my car, staring right at me. I put the car in drive and pulled away. He was maybe 15 feet away when I passed him. In the rear-view mirror, I saw him stop at the curb and watch me until I turned the corner. I got home around 11 o'clock, made a sandwich I barely ate, and sat at my kitchen table scrolling on my phone. At 11:48, Kayla texted, "Why did you run LOL?" I didn't reply. I blocked her number and closed the app. I thought about reporting it, but didn't know what I'd even say. A messy apartment, a knife in a table, and a guy walking toward my car. That was it. A few months later, I met my current girlfriend on Hinge. When I eventually told her the story, she asked what I thought was going on. I told her I didn't know, and that I was glad I never found out. My coworker Dennis had been trying to set me up with someone for a while. Then one day in October, he told me about a woman named Tara who he knew through his wife. He described her as funny, easygoing, and recently out of a long-term relationship. He showed me a picture on his phone. Dark hair, really attractive. So I said sure. We texted for about a week before agreeing to meet. She suggested a diner called House, about 20 minutes from where I lived. I'd driven past it 100 times, but never stopped there. It had one of those old plastic roadside signs and a gravel parking lot that looked like it hadn't changed since the 70s. I actually liked that. I got there a few minutes early and grabbed a booth near the window. The waitress brought me coffee while I waited. Tara showed up about 20 minutes late. She walked in wearing a jacket that looked a size too big for her, and right away, she seemed stressed out. I stood up when she got to the booth, but she barely smiled before sitting down. I asked if she'd had trouble finding the place. She said no. The waitress came over, and Tara ordered a Diet Coke without looking up from the menu. I tried starting conversation, asked how her week had been. "Busy," she said. I asked what she did for work. She told me she managed inventory for a warehouse outside town. I told her I worked project management for a roofing company. Honestly, the whole thing felt forced. I kept thinking about how Dennis described her as funny, and I couldn't figure out where he got that impression from. But after a while, she loosened up a little. We started talking about the town we both grew up in. Turns out we knew some of the same places. There was an old pizza place near a movie theater we'd both gone to as kids. That was the first time she smiled naturally. I remember thinking, okay, here we go. Now this feels normal. Then she set her fork down and said there was something she should probably tell me. I put my coffee down and waited. She told me she was still living with her ex-boyfriend. His name was Kyle. They'd broken up 2 months earlier, but she was still staying in his house because she hadn't found another place yet, and he owned it. Then she added that he had a bad temper. I remember immediately thinking, yeah, this is probably not something I want to get involved in. She also told me he was supposedly staying with his brother for the week. I nodded and acted polite about it, but mentally, I'd already decided this would probably be our only date. That kind of situation needs to be resolved before you start seeing new people. When we finished eating, we walked out to the parking lot together. I was trying to think of a polite way to say I wasn't interested without making things awkward. My car was parked near the front. That's when a pickup truck came flying into the lot. It swung hard and stopped directly behind my car, blocking me in. Everything happened fast enough that neither of us moved at first. The truck door flew open and a guy climbed out, yelling before both feet even hit the ground. He was screaming Tara's name. Quietly, without even looking at me, Tara said, "That's Kyle." Then she added, "Just get in your car and leave." Except I couldn't. His truck was blocking me in completely. Kyle reached into the bed of the truck and pulled out a tire iron. The second I saw it, my stomach dropped. He started walking toward us fast, yelling that he was going to kill me. I don't even know if he knew who I was. I think I was just the nearest target. I moved toward my driver's side door while he kept coming. I got inside, locked the doors, and started the engine. Kyle reached the car right as I threw it into reverse. I started backing up, trying to squeeze around the truck. Then he swung the tire iron. It slammed into the driver's side door hard enough to shake the entire car. But I kept backing up. Somehow I managed to get around the truck and out of the lot. I drove for about a mile before pulling into a gas station. I just sat there with the engine running, hands shaking against the steering wheel. Then I called the police. The officer asked if I was injured. I said no. He told me someone would follow up, so I gave him my number and went home. Around 11 o'clock that night, Tara texted me. She said she was sorry and that she genuinely didn't think Kyle would show up. Then she told me he'd apparently been tracking her phone without her knowing. She ended the message by saying none of it was my fault. I read it once, put my phone down, and went to bed. The next morning, I blocked her number. I never heard from her again. A few weeks later, Dennis brought her up one time while we were at work. He said she'd finally moved out and was staying with her sister. I told him that was good. Then he started to say something else, and I stopped him. I told him I appreciated him trying to set me up, but I really didn't want to hear anything else about Tara. He understood and let it go. Honestly, I didn't blame Dennis for any of it. He was a decent guy. But after that whole situation, I stayed off dating apps for a while. I'd been on a few online dates before, and most of them were forgettable. You talk for a few days, meet for coffee, and within 10 minutes, both people already know it's not going anywhere. That was fine with me. I wasn't looking for anything serious at the time. Just somebody decent to spend time with. Then I matched with a woman named Lindsay. Her profile said she was 34. Her pictures looked normal. No heavy filters or weird angles trying to hide what she looked like. She said she worked nights in the emergency department at a hospital in the city and had moved to the area from Nova Scotia a couple years earlier. We talked for 3 days before meeting. She was easy to talk to. She asked questions and actually responded to the answers instead of waiting for her turn to speak, which honestly felt rare on dating apps. She joked about surviving on bad coffee and granola bars because of her shifts at the hospital. I told her I could probably help with the coffee part. She said that sounded good. We agreed to meet on a Sunday afternoon at a coffee shop in a strip plaza. I got there early and grabbed a table near the window. The place was busy enough to have background noise without being loud. I ordered a black coffee and waited. Lindsay showed up about 5 minutes late. I recognized her immediately. But she didn't really look like her pictures. Not completely different. Just older. Maybe 10 years older than the photos she used. She had deeper lines around her eyes, and her hair was pulled back tight in a way that made her look exhausted. She wore a gray zip-up hoodie over a black shirt and carried a canvas tote bag over one shoulder. When she spotted me, she smiled. So I stood up and shook her hand. "Sorry I'm late," she said. "Parking was a mess." "No problem," I said. "I just got here." She ordered a latte, came back to the table, and we started talking. At first, it felt normal enough. She asked about my job, and I told her I worked project coordination for a contracting company. I asked about the hospital, and she said things had been rough lately because they were short-staffed. But maybe 10 minutes into the conversation, I noticed something. She kept checking her phone. Not constantly, but enough that it stood out. She'd glance down at it, put it face down on the table, then pick it up again a minute later. I didn't say anything. People get nervous on first dates. Otherwise, she seemed pleasant enough. She laughed a few times and told a pretty funny story about a guy who came into the ER convinced he'd broken his hand punching a vending machine. Honestly, I started thinking maybe the phone thing was just anxiety. Then she suggested we go for a walk. "There's a path behind the plaza," she said. "It's quieter back there." It was early afternoon, cold but sunny, so I didn't think much about it. We walked around the side of the building past a row of recycling bins and a dumpster that smelled like rotten food. The back area wasn't scenic at all, just cracked pavement, loading bays, a chain-link fence, and a couple parked cars. I remember thinking it was a weird place to walk. About halfway across the lot, Lindsay stopped. She turned toward me, and something about her expression suddenly felt off. Then a dark blue car rolled into the lot from the far side. It moved slowly before stopping maybe 30 feet away from us. Both doors opened at the same time. 2 men got out. The driver was heavy-set and looked to be in his late 40s. The other guy was younger and thinner, wearing a navy hoodie with his hands shoved into the pockets. That's when Lindsay stepped away from me. Just one step. But it told me everything. Then she pointed at me and said, "That's him. He's the one with the cash." My stomach dropped instantly. The younger guy came toward me fast. Before I could even react, he grabbed the front of my jacket with both hands and got right in my face. He smelled like cigarettes and something chemical underneath it. "Where is it?" he shouted. "I don't have any money," I said. "I don't even know what she told you. I just met her today." The older guy stayed back near the car with his arms crossed, just watching. I looked over at Lindsay. She'd moved closer to the fence and was staring at the ground, with her arms folded tightly across her chest, like she didn't even want to be there. The guy holding my jacket shook me hard. "Don't play stupid." At that point, I realized I wasn't talking my way out of anything. Standing there was only going to make it worse, so I grabbed his wrists, shoved him backward as hard as I could, then turned and ran. I heard footsteps behind me for a few seconds. I sprinted around the corner of the building and back toward the front entrance of the coffee shop where people were standing outside. One guy looked at me like I was insane. But I didn't stop moving until I got to my car. I drove home still shaking with adrenaline. The whole thing felt unreal. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to decide whether or not to call the police. Part of me knew I probably should. But honestly, I was embarrassed. And the last thing I wanted was attention from whatever kind of people those guys were. So I let it go. Lindsay never texted me again, and I never reached out to her either. That same night, I reported her profile on the app and explained what happened. About a week later, I got a message saying her account had been removed. Looking back, I honestly think Lindsay was probably in a bad situation herself. Maybe drugs, maybe debt, maybe both. That doesn't excuse what happened. But I still can't help feeling a little sorry for her. I'd been living in Tampa for about 6 weeks when this happened. I moved there for a new job and didn't really know anybody yet. Most evenings were either spent alone in my apartment or at the gym. I'd been divorced for about 2 years and was on and off dating apps at the time. One night in late October, I matched with a woman named Erica. She had brown hair in most of her photos and said she worked in marketing. We talked for a few days before she suggested dinner at a taco place on South Howard Avenue. I'd walked past it before, but never actually eaten there. We agreed to meet Wednesday at 7. I got there first and grabbed a table near the window. The place was busy for a weeknight. Exposed brick walls, hanging Edison bulbs, loud enough to feel alive, but not loud enough to ruin conversation. Honestly, it seemed like a good date spot. Erica showed up about 10 minutes late and apologized right away, which I appreciated. She was a little shorter than I expected, wearing jeans and a light jacket. When she sat down, she actually shook my hand, which made me laugh. She laughed too. The conversation was easy at first. She told me she grew up in Georgia and had only recently moved to Tampa, which was similar to me. She said she'd just moved into a new apartment near Harbor Island and seemed genuinely excited about it. She talked about painting the walls herself and building furniture from kits. I told her I still hadn't even hung anything on my walls yet. We split carnitas tacos and talked about how weird it is trying to meet people as an adult in a new city. Nothing about the night felt spectacular, but nothing felt wrong either. When dinner ended, I paid the bill, and we stood outside talking for another few minutes. Then she asked if I wanted to come see her apartment because she was proud of how it turned out. It was only around 9, and I didn't think much of it. So I said sure. Her building was a newer mid-rise with a parking garage underneath and electronic locks at the entrance. The lobby smelled like fresh paint and new carpet. There was a security camera pointed directly at the front doors. I remember noticing that specifically. Inside, the elevator was straight ahead. But instead of walking toward it, Erica headed toward a door near the stairwell. She slowed down and said she needed to grab something from her storage unit downstairs first. Apparently, a bookshelf had been delivered while she was at work. Then she asked if I could help carry it upstairs. I said sure. We took the stairs down one level into the basement. The hallway down there was narrow, with low ceilings and fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead. Bare concrete floors, exposed pipes running along the ceiling. Metal storage doors lined both sides of the hallway. And at the very end, one of the storage room doors was already open. I noticed that immediately. Erica walked in first. I followed behind her. The room itself was larger than I expected. Metal shelving lined the walls, stacked with cardboard boxes and plastic bins. Erica stopped just inside the doorway. And before I could really process the room properly, a man stepped out from behind one of the shelves to my right. Mid-30s maybe, short beard, gray polo shirt. He moved calmly toward the doorway behind us, blocking the exit. I turned toward Erica. What struck me most was that she didn't look surprised at all. The guy asked if I had any cash. I told him I didn't carry cash, which was true. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folding knife. He opened it one-handed and pointed it toward the shelf beside me. "Empty your pockets." I remember how calm his voice sounded. That was the part that bothered me most afterward, like he'd done it before. I put my wallet, phone, and keys onto the shelf. He picked up the wallet first, then my phone. He looked at the keys and left them there. Then he told me we were all going to walk to an ATM and I was going to withdraw whatever my daily limit was. I said, okay. I tried to sound cooperative because at that point I was mostly focused on not getting stabbed in a basement storage room. Erica still hadn't said a single word. She wouldn't even look at me. The three of us walked back upstairs with Erica in front, me in the middle, and the guy directly behind me with the knife hidden low by his leg. When we reached the lobby doors, Erica pushed through first. The second the guy opened the door behind her, I ran. I didn't think about it. I just ran. I sprinted down the sidewalk, crossed the street without looking, and kept going for 2 full blocks before ducking between a parked van and a pickup truck. I crouched there listening. My heart was pounding so hard, I could barely hear anything else. After about 2 minutes, I stood up and walked quickly back toward where I'd parked my car. I drove home without stopping once. In the end, they got my wallet, debit card, driver's license, and phone. Honestly, losing the phone bothered me most because everything was on it. For a while, I thought about calling the police. But every time I imagined explaining the story out loud, I felt like an idiot. I'd willingly followed a woman I met online into a basement at night. I basically walked directly into it, so I never reported it. And honestly, that part still bothers me now, because they were probably doing the same thing to other people. I ended up staying in Tampa after that. Eventually, I found an apartment I actually liked. I met people through work and later through a recreational soccer league I joined. And eventually, I met my current girlfriend on Hinge. When I finally told her this story, she looked at me like I was insane. Then she said she couldn't believe I never called the police. And the worst part is, she was probably right. I matched this brunette girl named Annette. She had 4 pictures, 3 of which she was posing alone in what looked like her backyard. The 4th one was in front of a pond. At the time, I didn't see it as a red flag that she was alone in all of her pictures. Honestly, why would I? But she was decently attractive, at least in my standards. So I talked to her. I got to the point where she asked what I was doing that night. When I said nothing, she asked if she could come over and hang out. Considering my bedroom was in the basement of my parents' house with a separate entrance, it would work out rather nicely. We set a time for her to come over. When the time came, she texted me literally right on the dot that she was outside. Punctual, to say the least. I let her in the side basement door entrance and we walked downstairs. I tried to make the greeting not awkward, but right off the bat, first impression, she seemed weird. Her responses were short. Her laugh was weird. When we sat down on my bed and I asked her how long the drive was, she laughed. She didn't even answer my question. She just laughed like I told a joke. And as she laughed, she looked right at me, her eyes still open wide. It was uncomfortable, and I already knew I wasn't going to vibe with this girl. I wanted her out ASAP. I turned the TV on in the background for filler, and I pretended to be laughing at the TV because of the constant, awkward silences. She never once batted an eye to look at the TV. She just watched me the whole time. I was able to wrap it up quickly by pretending I got a text about going into work early the next day, and I implied I needed to go to sleep. She seemed like she didn't want to leave. It was extremely awkward, but I managed to get her to follow me out the basement door. When she was finally gone, I had to ask myself, what did I just put myself through? Not even 5 minutes after she left, she texted me, "Are you sure you have to go to bed?" I was having fun. I read the text, then I threw my phone on the bed to charge while I went to get food upstairs. When I got back, I had 3 more texts from her, 2 being question marks, the last one being hello with more question marks. This girl was clearly nuts, so I blocked her. Done and done. I went to bed. An hour later, I woke in the middle of the night, like I often do. I'm a light sleeper. It's really annoying. Waking up randomly isn't weird for me. I instinctively felt around for my phone to check what time it was. But my phone wasn't by its normal spot on the ledge charging. And I 100% remembered putting it there. So I got up and started looking around for my phone. I turned on the bedside strip of red LED lights I had hung on the wall to light up the room just a bit. I couldn't find it though, and I'm the kind of person who will let that bother me until I find it. I went upstairs to grab the landline phone and bring it down so I could call my number. When I dialed my number, I heard it ringing from inside the boiler/laundry room, which was connected to my room. I entered the boiler room, and there was my phone left on the washer machine, causing the entire machine to vibrate as it rang. I knew this was bizarre because I didn't do laundry that night. I didn't even remember going in there. I picked up my phone to see a bunch of new messages from some random number. I opened the texts to see 2 pictures. Pictures of me sleeping. Above the pictures were 2 texts saying, "Nice, good job blocking me." The second one saying, "Lock your door next time." And I realized what an idiot I was. I was so anxious to get her out of my room that I didn't even lock the door when she left. Then I can't say for certain, but I felt like I wasn't alone in the room. I just felt another presence, and I had a feeling that she may have been hiding behind the cylinder boiler in the darkest corner of the room. But I didn't go look. I went upstairs to get my parents and call the police. Given that the girl was dumb enough or crazy enough to leave a digital footprint, tracking her and getting charges pressed on her was easy. Her name wasn't even Annette. Her real name was Silvana. Her charges were a breaking and entering charge and a stalking and harassment charge. I, of course, got a restraining order. And I've never heard from that girl again.